What's up, y'all? You are listening to For the Artists, a podcast brought to you by Creative M Projects. I'm your host, Phylicia Rashad, and I have a special feature in-house today. His name is Jeff Gardner, okay? And you guys need to send him a lot of extra love from wherever you're listening from, because you know what? We go way back. I don't know if we'll say how far back, but we go way back. Let me tell you about Jeff, okay? Jeff is thrilled to be returning to the Mark Taper Forum after working with Phylicia Rashad. Yes, I did say Phylicia, okay? We'll find out if he's on a first name basis. Blues for an Alabama Sky. A sound designer, Foley artist, and actor based in Los Angeles. Additional credits include, but let me throw in, are not limited to, because y'all, if you see his resume and his credits, they are long, okay? But that has nothing to do with his age. Anyway, in the upper room at Denver Center for the Performing Arts, The Cake and Paradise Blue at the Geffen House, Native Son at Kirk Douglas and Antaeus Theatre Company. He's also done work for the Wallis Annenberg Center, Pasadena Playhouse, A Noise Within, Circle X Theater, Echo Theatre Company, Rogue Machine. I mean, my goodness, y'all. Shakespeare Theatre Company DC, Arena Stage, the Kennedy Center, Cleveland Playhouse, Williamstown Theatre Festival, as well as the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in Scotland. Jeff can be seen at LA Theater Works, where he regularly performs live sound effects. Okay, we'll get into his online stuff, but Jeff and I went to the LA County High School for the Performing Arts. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. Good to see you, hon.
It's so good to see you. It's been a long time. We reconnected. We were working on a project together, and I'm so glad because I was able to be like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And I'm so glad you said yes.
Yes.
So let me start here, because you graduated from LASKA, same as me. And did you go right into, did you just make that jump right in out of graduating from high school into doing theater, like professionally, full time, or, you know?
Yeah, when I was at LASKA, I was, as a theater student, I actually went straight into PCPA, which is a conservatory in Santa Maria, and I studied acting. I continued studying theater. And long story short, I did not graduate from PCPA. I had some personal issues, and there was some stuff going on. I didn't really feel like that was the place for me. It wasn't the right time. And so I left there to go to Williamstown Theatre Festival in Massachusetts, and basically continued working in theater there. Had a really great summer learning how to be in a repertory theater, and had the most fun, met some really cool people, and I've had lifelong friends with them since then. And this was back in 94. So I credit actually a lot of sort of my early network creatively came from going to Williamstown and not finishing conservatory.
So sometimes it's a good thing to not finish.
Sometimes it's a good thing. And I actually was, at the time it felt kind of a bit like a failure. I was like, oh, I'm not going to continue. But I had gotten so much stuff from LASKA. Our training at LASKA was incredible and valuable. I mean, everything that we learned there is kind of like what I would have learned in a conservatory. So I kind of felt like there was a lot of redundancy in continuing that sort of journey there. So I just fell in love with wanting to work regionally as an actor. So I just left from there. I just went to DC and continued working there as a regional actor, and just kind of hopped around from place to place. Would go from DC, do some Shakespeare, went to Seattle, did theater there, and just wherever I could, go back to LA, do some film and some TV, and then work on some more theater in town. But, this is all I ever wanted to do. It's all I knew, was just to act, was to be on stage. But as often happens with our journey, I definitely knew there was more. I just wanted to do theater, but I also wanted to create. And so a lot of the relationships I picked up along the way, there was this kind of interesting relationship to sound and to music, to sound effects. I don't know if you remember at LASKA, but we had a radio, 1940s radio kind of class, and we would workshop and do these 1940s radio presentations, where it was like a Christmas Carol, 1940s style. And we would do like The Shadow and all these different kind of really interesting 1940s Mercury radio type shows. And I never forgot that, but I had always kind of stored that away, just kind of behind me. And it wasn't until like, God, I think a decade later that I started to get interested in, oh, maybe there's something more. Maybe I can also do this when I'm not acting, when I'm being challenged by auditions and, not getting the kind of work that I wanted. So I started to create a show that was centered around sound effects. And so I created this one-man show called Kill Your Television, which was a challenge for me to create a show that was no spoken dialogue, everything was going to be from out there, like sound effects and, voices and things that would kind of be in the ether that would challenge me to, I don't know, just create this work. And so the show, Kill Your Television, was a one-man show about a couch potato who gets possessed on this rainy day, gets possessed by his television and gets hijacked and taken on this journey where he goes through all of these wonderful things that he fell in love with in TV. And I fell in love with radio and sort of sound effects through that. And so since then, I've always kind of balanced the two between creating sound effects as a Foley artist, designing sound, and also acting. So those have kind of been my mainstay as a creative artist, just kind of challenging myself to blend and kind of those three things kind of alternate and educate me on who I am as an artist.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Jeff. First of all, the things that you're saying are so rich with stuff that I have questions bubbling up. Okay. I'm like, where shall I go first? Let's go back to the whole you feeling slightly like maybe a little bit of a failure because you started something and you weren't going to finish it, right? Because I think that's very powerful. The fact that you could identify that, hey, this is not working and I'm going to switch, I'm going to shift, I'm going to change directions, because I feel like there's so many artists, especially when they're young and they're just starting out. It's like they might have a dream and they're so laser focused on that dream that they just keep chugging at that thing, and they don't allow the changes and the adaptiveness to maybe shift and go in a different direction, So
Yeah.
how were you able to, did you have help knowing that, or was that just like a gut thing for you?
Well, the thing that happened sort of PCPA, personally, it didn't feel like a safe place for me. For one, I'll start there. That it was I didn't feel like I was nurtured
Okay,
in the
good.
same way that I was being nurtured at LASKA. LASKA, as we know, is one of the most nurturing places on the planet, and I felt like I came into my own. I didn't really live my life until I started working, understanding that I could be an artist at LASKA. And so we had these amazing mentors, of course, that would nurture me. And when I went to PCP, I didn't feel like I had those same mentorships or that same sort of just nurturing. And so leaving there was not easy. And it certainly meant that I could go, yeah, well, this is it, right? I mean, what career am I going to have? I can't even finish here. But at the same time, I think I knew that leaving there was probably the best thing I could do for myself, for my health, for my sanity, for my creativity. And I'm glad it was because you just don't know. And so when I started searching for whatever that new thing would be, it was really just about finding my clan in other places, finding my family. And I was very lucky to find it in many different places, all over the country. DC was a big home for me creatively. It's still, I think, one of my favorite artistic homes.
Huh.
But the shift into sound, or into sort of combining other sort of, I don't know, I guess another discipline, that was one that came kind of accidentally,
Mhm.
where my pinpoint, just like you said, I was totally laser focused on acting. That's all I was ever going to do. I was going to go to Juilliard. I was going to work on Broadway. I was going to do movies. I mean, of course, that was my, 16-year-old brain thinking this is all I was ever going to do. So
Yeah.
when there were periods of spurts where I wasn't doing anything, where I wasn't working, I had to challenge myself to say, what is it you really want? And if these roles aren't coming, what is it that you can do to still feel like you're part of something special, being part of being creative? Because I wasn't ever going to do anything else but be creative. It may not have been just acting, but I knew I had to create. And because I had remembered those 1940s classes, which, by the way, I even did 1940s radio theater outside of LASKA. I had some of my friends from LASKA. We created a radio theater company. So that was always in the back of my head, where it was like, oh, okay, maybe there's something there. And so I just said, hell, I'm going to create more. I'm going to create a radio theater idea. I'm going to create a discipline where I can sort of learn more about sound and music, and I'm just going to do it. And I don't know what's going to come out of this. I have no idea, but I love it. I enjoy it. And so I took myself to a conservatory for sound, where I learned how to edit Pro Tools and create sound, and learn about Foley more in depth with people who were doing Foley for movies. And I fell in love with it. I just said, oh, this is so exciting. And I'm still an actor, where I get to create sound effects, like footsteps and, cloth and fights and different kind of things that I can match action to. It's still me performing, but it's being of service to a sort of a greater thing than myself. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. So yeah, I guess, I don't know if that answers it, but that's sort of how I
That answers
shifted
it.
disciplines.
Yeah, that answers it. And it's very cool. I love the fact that you just brought up that, I mean, it was as simple as you tapped into something that resonated with you, like that you loved, that you really liked and were interested in. Because I feel like now, with the way that things are, it's almost like we undervalue when we have a love for something. It's almost like, poo poo on that. Okay, you love it, but what pays the bills,
Yeah,
and that continues to be perpetuated in society. And it's just like, it just like, oh, it grieves me. It's like, because there's a reason why we love certain things. Like, it's so connected to how we're wired, how we're designed, what we're created for, I think, in terms of a purpose.
yeah,
So to negate that or dumb it down or undervalue it, almost like because you love something, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if you've
absolutely.
come across that.
Yeah,
And I feel like artists especially have to deal with that a lot, because we are so passionate about, when it comes to creativity. It's like we're just so passionate, and
yeah,
people almost are like, okay, that's just your creativity, you're just passionate about that, but
yeah.
like, focus on something real. It's like,
Right.
why can't that be real?
But it's so real that it can't be anything but. Like, there's nothing that's gonna, I don't want to say like get in your way, like there's obstacles, but that's what you want. And if you're right, if our heart is really set on that, it does feel manifest. It does feel like there's nothing that you can possibly do that's going to be other than that. Like, I've done other things. We all have, we support ourselves. I was a catering manager. I was working in cubicles, doing like selling software and selling like long distance. But we know our heart tells us, and my heart there was no creativity in any of that. There was no value for me. My heart just wasn't full doing any of that. And
Mm-hmm.
it just felt like I had to find something to make me happy. And yeah, of course it's not easy, but I had to go to school, back to school, to do that. So LASKA was my school for acting, and I went back to school to learn how to create sound and create and design. and I spent a lot of money on it. I kind of put myself in debt, but you know, the reward is huge for me. I get to go into a darkened theater and listen to music and sound effects swirling around in the theater and creating these wonderful shifts and transitions and underscores that actors can enter into these sonic soundscapes. And that's the stuff that I love. I love it as an actor doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it as a designer, being able to sort of take a backseat and really just take in the whole storytelling and see how it comes together. I love that. Love it.
You're making me love it. Okay. I mean, it's like oozing. I can feel the love. Oh, you know what I forgot to tell you? I was like, listen, if I ask a question and you don't want to answer it, you can totally bow out. I tell everybody that, and I forgot to tell you that. So that's just an aside, because I want to ask you this. Just in terms of like, what was your home life like? And the reason I'm asking that is because so far in the things that you've shared, there's been different points where you've had to make some pretty risky decisions, I would say. I mean, it's like there's a risk to saying, I'm not going to finish this program, or there's a risk to saying, okay, I'm graduating from high school. Now I'm going to go into training. There's all these risks associated with these things. And I'm like, and you talked about finding your clan, when you went to, I think, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what was your environment like prior to all that? I mean, did you have an environment that set you up to be like, I am cool with taking risks because I know that I have a support system and they got me? Or I'm just curious.
Right. Yeah. I think it's funny, as the years go by, I think my remembrance of things, my attachment to things changes. And certainly when I was growing up, my attachment to my home life was that it was certainly not very nurturing. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't something it was almost something I needed to break free from.
Mm-hmm.
And as the years go by, I see that there are moments where my family, my father, after I was, I think 5 or 6, my mom, maybe 3 or 4, my mom had divorced him. And so I was raised by another man for the rest of my life, who I didn't call dad, but I called him by his name, Angelo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they were nurturing in a different way. Obviously they took care of me, they put a roof over my head, I had clothes. I certainly was not without.
Yeah.
But there were markers that showed me that going to LASKA is one. I asked if I could audition for LASKA. It was a big decision, but they did say yes. So obviously they were nurturing in that respect. So there was another one where West Covina Playhouse, where I grew up in West Covina, there was a community playhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked if I could audition for a show there. And it was, maybe there was a little bit of, ideas of like, I'm not sure that we can let you do this because it's after hours. But they let me do that. So even though I have memory markers that say it was a very difficult sort of not nurturing childhood, they did allow me certain things that they knew I couldn't be without, that I needed for my soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look back at it and I go, at the time, it was really difficult. And there were times where I had to step away. I think there was even a year where I went without speaking to my parents at all.
Mm-hmm.
But they were there to sort of help say yes. So it couldn't have been that bad. I don't know if that makes sense, like where the memory and the marker sort of, as I've gotten older, I go, okay, it's not as bad. Like, yes, it was bad. It felt bad because you're in it. And it's like, oh, you're crying and you're like, you got to let me do this. I hate you and those kind of things. But you look back at it as an adult and you go, yeah, it was bad, but it could have been worse.
It can always be worse, right?
Always be worse. Because they did allow me, again, I'm at LASKA. That was my opportunity. I was able to do that. But they didn't understand it. They for sure definitely weren't going to, just to be honest, like they were going to pay for me to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told them where I was going to go to an arts conservatory, absolutely not. Like, we're not paying you to say to be or not to be on stage. That was literally what they said. And I was like, this is what I want. You put you had said. So, there's an instance where it was like, I felt that I was being sort of squelched in my passion. But they were wanting to take care of me. Like you said, passion, your parents want you to succeed and your friends want you to succeed, but just because you have passion doesn't mean that money's coming in. The money's in, it's out there. You still have to get it. So, so, that part was a very confusing thing for me, because I knew I was never going to do anything else in my life. There was just no choice. I had no choice. But I had to find that for myself, and I got a scholarship. I ended up getting a scholarship at LASKA to pay my full ride at the conservatory for the time I was there.
Nice.
And everything was very much self-starter, but then going, okay, who else in my network knows about this and might have influence or help? So my community, my clan, my family, really, it was more out there than it was at home. It was out there in the theater world where I was able to find solace and find comfort in myself, in others, knowing that I was worth it, knowing that I could do this, that I was of value,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully to answer the family, it's complicated, but it's all just, it's your truth and your remembrance of it, but it's nowhere near as bad as it could have been. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. But our truth and our perception is, it's key.
Everything.
Because it basically guides, how we flow and how we move, because that's how we take things in and that's how we internalize them.
Absolutely.
So.
And at the time, my truth was, this is horrible. I don't want to live like this. This is absolutely, I felt just denied, a lot. And I felt really belittled, and like diminished for wanting to do more than my part. Like, it would be okay if I just wanted to go through life and, do 9 to 5, not have any ambition, and just be there and be loyal to mom and dad and the family. That was enough. At least that was bestowed upon me, that is the structure that they were comfortable with. Mm-hmm. So for me, wanting more than my share was probably, it probably felt like, I don't know if that's a violation or whatever you want to call it, but it didn't gel with what their lifestyle goals were. So, I'm very much the black sheep in that way. And I definitely, I just felt alien until I discovered people like you at LASKA. And then I was like, oh, wow, there are other freaks and like amazing people that really are passionate about singing and dancing and acting and like just enjoying your life to the fullest and not being told you're too much. Take it down a notch, turn down the volume,
Yes. I feel like even in adulthood, people are still like, whoa. And it's like, I'm not even being extra. I'm just being myself.
Right. You're just being yourself. Turn it down just a couple notches.
Just a couple notches.
I no. Oh no, I totally get that. And a lot of my friends are that way. I'm married to an artist, and she, I know that was the same thing for her. She would get that sort of idea of like people saying, have to turn it down. You're too much. And it's like, this is me. This is who I am. Like, what are you trying to do? Tell me I can't just be in my skin and like, do that thing that I do that makes me who I am.
Sometimes it's not even what we do. It's just even sometimes how we present ourselves, like even in our dress or our clothing or something like that,
Right.
And it's like, wow, are you doing all that? I'm like, doing all of what? I'm not doing anything. This is what I like.
This is what I do. So
yeah.
I absolutely understand that. And I was like a kid on Ritalin, like I wasn't, but it was like I was jumping up and down, and people would have to like, I naturally have a lot of energy. So sometimes it'd be like, what's going on with this kid? Mm-hmm. And I was on this steroid medication as a young kid because I had issues with my stomach, my intestine. And so they would put me on that, and it would make me even more like, I'm like, you didn't need that. I was already naturally at an 11. So like, you didn't, further than that. But hey, thank God for, having an outlet creatively, because as we all know, like without that, like where would all that unused, that amazing energy go? I have two brothers. I'm in the middle child. So I see my older brother, I see my younger brother. My older brother used his energy and went in a completely different path. Not to get so personal, but hey, we're here talking creative and process. And
yeah,
my brother was, when it's a bad crowd, and found a scene that was very dangerous and devastating ultimately for him. He died very young. He died in his 40s. And so I look and see that path. And then I have my younger brother, who was a very good kid, very grounded, and very successful in creating his opportunities. And I'm in the middle, and I just kind of see, that I'm always kind of looking both ways and seeing, here's one path and then here's another path. And, I'm kind of have those two on my shoulder the whole time, going, here's one and here's another. Which one do you want? So it's a very interesting road to like go, okay, yeah, this is what I want and I'm excited about it, but I know how easy it is to get lost, to just kind of surrender yourself to something that is puts you out of control, And so, yeah, it's a very sad thing to see your family devastated by that. But I also think it's a very valuable lesson to remember, like how easy it is to get lost as a creative person. We have tons of people, maybe yourself too, that like they lose themselves. Because of failure, because of whatever, they don't live up to a standard. They turn to drugs and alcohol. And it's like, God, I see how easy that is. And I just couldn't choose that. Maybe I didn't have the ism. I don't know if that's, but I didn't even want to like try. It wasn't like I was even in a position where I was like, well, let's just try some of that and see what happens.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do that to myself because I felt like it was a dangerous road. My father was also addicted to heroin. So like coming from that, it's like, oh, I have to create something new for myself, and something that would be my path, that would be on my terms, and that I was sort of in control of it in a way that I wasn't going to succumb to the addictions of the sins of my father, the past. So, yeah.
I mean, wow, Jeff. I mean, we went to school together. It was a long time ago, but I have a deeper appreciation for you as a person, hearing more of your story, because there's just so much richness there. I just had no idea, I mean, kudos to you for being able to stay in a place where you're like, ooh, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not going to make some of those same mistakes.
Right.
Because I also see, people that are aware of mistakes that have been made before them, like by mom, dad, or whoever. And even though they might say, I'm not going to do that, they still end up going and doing that very thing that they said they weren't going to do.
Right.
So, I mean, it takes such a strength in your ability to be able to observe. And I love the phrase be present, because I feel like you're so present, like in your life at some of the most vital times, like a lot of crossroad times.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate that you also were able to like stay on that one thing that you were passionate about. Because you talk about getting lost, right? It's getting lost, and it's like there's so much temptation. I mean, I was guilty of it myself, in terms of not staying with the one thing that is on your heart to do just because you love it and you're passionate about it. And you get drawn away by the voices and the different temptations, and then you don't stick with that one thing, and then you end up losing time or just missing it altogether if you never get back to it. And then all that's lost in terms of because as a creative, it's like all that we have, we're giving and we're sharing with other people. It's not for us. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so we're robbing other people of the thing that we have inside of us when we don't stay true to whatever that thing is.
Right. Yeah, that's powerful. And it's true. It is a great thing. I mean, service, being of service is, it's outside of ourselves. I mean, I agree with you 100%. That's an interesting way of putting it, because it would feel like a loss, to not be able to put that out in the universe, to continue putting that out. And we have a gift. There's a lot of different things we can do creatively, but it doesn't have an age limit necessarily too. So like we talked about this path and being sort of directional and very laser focused, like blinders. But I think that line that I always thought in my head that would be just a straight line
Yeah.
has taken so many paths and so many like off-roading adventures that I kind of realized that it's not, I never put it in words as linear anymore. That I know that it's going to take me here, and I'm going to stop off for a little while and go, okay, here's some interesting sonic world that I can play with. And then I go over here and I learn a little bit about stage managers and like the journey that people have putting the craft together from behind the scenes in that perspective. And then I go and discover music. I mean, but it always brings me back to the road. And I know that road, which is whatever it is, the creative road or theater or whatever that umbrella is, I can't ever get far away from it. I go to DC, I go to Seattle, I know that I'm going to find myself back on that road. I'm a better actor because of the design and the music that I've sort of built for myself. And I'm a better designer because of the work I do as an actor. I always think that they educate and inform me, because my lens as an actor is, I think most of us as actors, our lenses can be very singular. And we just look at our role. We go through the script and we look at our lines. But as a designer, I really have to look at all the lines. I have to look at all the characters. I have to paint every single person's story. So my iris and my lens is much wider than it ever was because of that. So to go back and forth with that knowledge, I'll never be the same again because of that. Because I see the story is not just about one person. The storytelling is about what the writer has given us. The writer has given us 6 characters in this universe that they coexist. And that's a gift for me that I was always maybe just focused on myself as an actor, right? So I think that was really valuable to me, and I never forgot that. And so I can't ever go back now. Like I always look at everybody else that's in the story because it's not just me.
Yeah.
And that's why people come and see the show. They're like, okay, what is the parts? Like, who's telling the story at what point, and where are all these souls being guided, and what ultimately is the theme of the play and what we're in learning. So yeah, that's where the head and the heart go together. I can be very heady and intellectual as a designer, but be joyful and like physicalizing the character as an actor.
Hey, heady and hearty sounds good to me. You don't want to be just a head, or you don't want to be just a heart. Okay, you got the best of both worlds.
Heady and hearty. So I definitely do that, Melissa. I'm heady and hearty all the time.
Heady and hearty. I like it. You know what's really cool though? Okay, so from time to time I do like these host chats, right? If I don't have a feature or whatever. Anyway, so last week I talked about, that oh my gosh, it's a phrase that's well known. All those who wander are not lost. Are you familiar? Well, I talked about that last week, but I kind of talked about it from like a tough love aspect of like, you know what? Don't be out there wandering and wasting your time. You know what I mean? Especially if you know kind of where you're going. So I love that what you just talked about in terms of the straight path and, having an idea of being on the straight path, but you end up coming up here, you end up going down here, but you still end up coming back on the path, still headed in the right direction. And I feel like it kind of ties into what I was talking about, because even though you might not be like exactly where you thought you would be on the path, you're not just hanging out aimlessly wasting time. Do you know what I mean? You're like figuring it out and learning and having all these things happen along the way that still are moving you in the direction that you need to be going, which is different than wandering, wouldn't you say?
Different than wandering. The soul knows what it wants, and it's just gonna go out here for a little bit, and they'll take a little piece. There's some pieces there that help the puzzle and help us guide us back. So yeah, absolutely. Wanderer, what is the phrase? All those who wander.
All those who wander are not lost.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've heard that phrase before. I like that.
Oh, okay. I thought it was kind of, but now you know it. Now you know it. But
knowing's half the battle.
I like what you just said though. The soul knows what it wants.
The soul knows what the soul knows.
That's quotable, y'all. Jeff.
We can't escape it. We just can't. Otherwise we are lost, right? Otherwise maybe we are. I mean, it's, hey, listen, we just had our reunion. We had our wonderful reunion of some odd years. One of the things I found with all of us that I've talked to briefly was that we're still creative beings. It doesn't matter what we're doing. We're all kinds of things, whether we go back to an office gig or whether we're, doctors or therapists or whatever it is. There's still thoughts and approaches that are creative that I've found for all of us. So, going back to the idea of like, what is success and what is failure? Like, that's what's so great is you go to these, these absence of not having been with your friends for however many decades, and you see them and their happiness and everything is still guiding them, and they're still using their creativity to their fullest, which would maybe makes and separates them in the field that they've chosen, because they have that artistic bent or that sort of other approach to what it is they're doing. So, it's a very success and failure around, I guess, completing what it is that you were destined or you think you were manifested to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's all relative. We all have learned so much over the years, and I think we're so spontaneous and creative beings, those artists that have come together like we did at LASKA, and you realize that's always with you. That never goes away. It's always there. The way that you maybe parent, the way that you your relationships with others, the way that you deal with stress, maybe there's a creative response to it, and you realize that maybe there are certain things that you can't just define who you are because you feel like you didn't succeed the way that you thought you were on that path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's no, you certainly can't judge any of that. We also fall out of love in things. We also fall out of love with our careers, and maybe it's not as exciting as we thought it was going to be. Maybe it's too much business and bureaucracy. So we're like, no, my heart's not there anymore. Exactly. So you go and you find something else. I mean, that's the thing. Like, not that this is a podcast about success, but creatively, we always are. I find that all of us are still thinking that way. We're still outside of the box. We're still like finding ways to think unlike anything else. I don't know if any of that. Yeah.
But it totally makes sense. But listen, I mean, success, I think we can totally talk about success here, because listen, I feel like it's really important for people to have your own measure for what success is. Don't use a measure that someone else is. We can determine our own validation for how successful we are, or
Absolutely.
I feel like it's so tied to feeling it like whatever you choose to do, whatever goals you choose to have, it's like, are you being successful in those things? Whether or not that's me making an exceptional dinner tonight, what I mean?
Absolutely.
Hey, my day was exceptional because I made a bomb dinner, like whatever it is, like, I feel like we have to change the mirror or the lens.
Yeah. And not compare ourselves. Certainly, like you're saying, don't ever compare yourself to another person. If I did that, I'm a total failure as an actor, and as a designer, I'm still a fraud. Like I'll still be pushing the fraud button every time. And yet I'm in places where I feel like if I look back at, 20-year-old Jeff or LASKA Jeff and go, well, this is what you're doing now, that would be success. But now I'm here, and it's like, maybe there's never what is the Martha Graham quote? on the divine dissatisfaction, that there's always something that keeps us marching and growing. And I think that never goes away. I don't think we're ever completely satisfied as artists, because maybe that's the point. Maybe we always want to keep, growing and keep shaping what that is. So I'm never, I can be happy knowing that once tech comes and I've created the sounds that I wanted, once we open the play, I can walk away going, okay, great. That's a good version of what we were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if we had another week and we were still working in the rehearsal room or in tech, I would be working until the end. It's like what's the comparison, the analogy about if you have a week to do a project, you're going to do it in a week. But if they give you that same project and say, now you have a month to do it, you would literally take a month to do that entire project. I don't know what's to say which one's better, because you have stress on one end where you're front loading, and then you have the other stress of it's all relative.
Yeah, but you know where I thought you were going with that? It's like, okay, so you have a week or you have a month, and it's like, but in the month you still do everything in that last week.
You still do everything in the last week.
You still don't actually use the whole month. You know what I mean? You feel like you have more time.
That's probably very accurate in many ways too. But yeah, I will consume my brain will consume creatively a month of work, and I may procrastinate for 3 of the weeks, and maybe the last week is like gung ho. But if you have 1 week, it's like high stress and like, oh my God, like everything is consumed with that 1 week of putting together all the pieces and making it go. So, but I don't know, does that define dissatisfaction? Does that resonate with you sometimes, where the work that you,
Totally. Because you know what? I feel like we never fully arrive, and I feel like for the people that do, they're in denial or they're self-deceived, because as long as we're living and breathing, there's more to know. There's more, like we're just not going to be perfect 100% fully arrived. Like, I feel like that's what life is. It's not till the transition to,
and it's creative. So creative is not like project creatively, like what is perfect. Like, we have awards to say like who is the best person for this and who is the best for that creatively. But, it's silly to try to define those things. Like perfect, what's the perfect production of Raisin in the Sun? We've seen many actors in those roles. We've seen many people directed, and it's like, oh, that's just a really incredibly written piece of theater.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be all kinds of things, but you're still going to get something from it. It's still going to be enjoyable. I don't know. I've lost touch with trying to be perfect in my work anymore. And I've started to be comfortable with doing my best work and just knowing that that's good enough, because I can't attain a value that is, you can't ever attain that. It's impossible. Yeah. So I've stopped doing that, and I'm more comfortable with myself as an artist now, which I guess is a big leap, because I can look back at my career and go, how nervous I was, because I was thinking about the perfection that was going to happen because I was doing this. And now I feel like a sense of ease when I approach my work that I've never felt before. It's getting older. Maybe that's all it is, but I feel like I'm comfortable now knowing that I have a skill set, and that I have some skills that I can use to finish what I'm doing, and that I can be comfortable knowing I have a team behind me, that I have the history of what I've created behind me. So I'm much more taken care of now. But I do want to, and I wonder with you and other artists if this is the same, that little voice that comes in that still is like the fraud button that comes in and says, you're not good enough, or you're not the right person, or you don't even have the experience for this. That still happens. But again, the time that it takes for me to push that aside is much less now than it was,
Jeff, that's some good stuff right there. Okay. I love how eloquently you broke that down, because you know what? Vulnerable moment. I mean, I'm not the whole perfection thing. It's like when you grow up like as a child performer. Okay. So since the age of 4 for me, I don't know how young it was for you,
All right.
but
4?
yeah, 4. So, and you're always, I mean, it's being
Wow.
drilled in you, the measure, right? This measure that you have to meet, which ultimately is a sense of perfection for someone. But when you're that
Right.
young, you don't understand, well, that's their idea of perfection. So you're always striving to please at this level of perfection. And so even now into adulthood, I sometimes have to really like reel it in and check myself because it's like it was wired in there at such a young age that sometimes it's hard to like remove myself from that. And you just subconsciously are still trying to be this perfect whatever, which is annoying.
Which is unattainable. But at 4 years old, I mean, wow, that's yeah. I started when I was maybe 13 or 14. So yeah, I can't imagine what that's like. And also I wonder how many artists like yourself who start so young, if they fall out of love with that, because it's like now you're an adult and you look back at something. Can't even fathom that. I have so many questions myself because I don't even know what that's like. Because I know a lot of child actors and they are still creative, but they're definitely not doing what they maybe started out, because like that's a business. Like that became a business and a practice that wasn't enjoyable, wasn't loving. It came from a place of like, but you're nodding. So I assume all this stuff is very well charted, right, for you in your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, by the time I left LASKA, I was like, okay, you know what? It hasn't happened. I'm tired. And I went off to college. And the idea of studying for another 4 years, something that I have been doing, stuff that I have been doing since I was 4, I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I was like, and my school was like $26,000 at the time. Who knows how much it is now? But I was like, that's a lot of money to do what? Like, I'm not going to waste that money. So then I came up with I mean, I guess you could call it a plan B, but it was like, okay, let's come up with another career. And then I started going down that path. And then I came back to what really, I'm passionate about, which is music and singing, all of those things. But yeah, it's so
Right.
interesting.
And the fraud thing comes up, I'm sure, for everybody, but it's interesting for me because I don't know, that's an interesting thing to continue even at my age, our age. It's like you think things would just go away, but we're human beings and those things are naturally going to come up. Feelings. But we have an amazing network of people that are there doing the same thing you are.
Mm-hmm.
We go into these rooms and put up a musical, a show, a production. We're all there for the same reason. We're after the same, hopefully, that we're putting up this play and being of service to that and telling this story that you realize you're taken care of. And that's the thing that's really gotten me through a lot over the years, is to know that there is a protection. There's almost a protection that's even outside of the room that's looking in and going, this is important, because you have thousands of people, hundreds and thousands of people coming to see this work. And, kids that are seeing a show for the first time, maybe a musical or Shakespeare for the first time. And, that get to have this unique experience that's one of a kind that changes who you are. I know it changed for me. I'm sure, God, you were 4. So, but for me as a teenager watching my first play and having someone from, this was Midsummer Night's Dream, Puck, literally grab me and touch me as an audience member. It was like breaking through this amazing magical fourth wall and touched me. And it was like, whoa, it was like I was knighted or I was gifted this magic of being able to understand something bigger than myself. And it was like my mind was blown away and it was never the same. I fell in love with that. And, I always look back at that and go, I hope that that's something that happens, in the theater, for that every day there's somebody that sits there and can sit and watch and be touched in the same way, that there's this magic, or power that says, you too can now, your world. It's like you see color for the first time when you've been living in a black and white world.
Yeah.
It's really special, obviously. And I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't, it didn't fulfill me. And
Uh-oh.
so
You froze for a moment. And you're frozen again. All right. Well, Jeff, I don't know if you can hear me. We'll give it a second. We are gonna begin to wrap up. So
I hate it, but I also hope it never goes away. Oh, I can. Are we
you
going
can't.
in
Okay,
and out?
good. Because you went, yeah, you were like frozen. So the last bit of what you said, we didn't hear.
And that's the secret of the universe.
Oh my gosh. But you know what, Jeff, we are going to begin to wrap up soon because I I'm not going to have you on here for 2 hours. Although I clearly could. I have like one, maybe two questions that are bubbling, and then we'll just talk about some fun stuff, and then we'll kind of land the plane. But I wanted to know, just from a practical standpoint, how do you kind of you've talked about your soul and being fulfilled, and like, so what practically does that look like for you in terms of what do you do to make sure that you are like in a good space mentally, spiritually, emotionally? Like, is there anything that you do regularly, or I'm just curious, or do you just constantly always observe and analyze and have thoughts?
Well, I'm definitely my brain's always going and swimming. There's always something. I think I could stand to meditate more and exercise more, which I've been doing a little more regularly. But I think my practice is like reading scripts and reading more stories. I feel that's my own sort of meditation. Listening to music is kind of what started it all anyways for me. Even before acting, when I was a kid and I was upset or emotionally like just needed something, I would go in my room, put on my Walkman and listen to music. And that's still to this day, if I put something on in my studio, it doesn't even have to be related to what I'm working on. It's emotionally, spiritually takes me to a place that kind of is meditation for me. So I guess music is my, not only the craft for me, but it's also my meditation. And music is the best.
I agree.
And there's so much of it. Like, I don't even have like, you would almost wonder what kind of specific taste I have musically, because I just love it all. Like, there's some things I maybe don't like as much, but I listen to everything because I find so much beauty in the different genres and the different voices. So that's I guess maybe that's what it's become. It's my soul. It soothes my soul. Actually, soothes your soul. I will tell you, when I was a kid, my mom rocked me to sleep in my little crib, and those little mobiles that make music, right?
Yeah.
That would put me to sleep. So ever since, and I have a memory of that for somehow, even though I don't remember anything before 6, but I remember that music was soothing and meditative, and it was just so good for my soul. So maybe that's what it is for me. I didn't realize it, but probably, yeah.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. I can see that. Visually, I like that. So who are some of the coolest people that you've been able to work with?
I love that. There's so many great performers, directors, writers. And through the years, like, a couple of the highlights for me, I do live Foley for LA Theatre Works. So I do live sound effects. Actors are on stage being recorded. They each have their microphone in front of them. And I'm over on the side with my table of props, recreating sound. And one of the plays we did, even the title, I guess it's okay, it's a podcast, but the title is The Motherfucker with a Hat. and it's a Stephen Adly Gurgis play, and they brought the New York cast out to do it, and the New York cast was amazing. It was this actor Bobby Cannavale, and they brought Chris Rock out, who had done the original role on Broadway, and
Wow.
Elizabeth Rodriguez, and we just sat in this room rehearsing, and just even like shooting the shit, like hearing the stories, but then also being on stage and watching Chris Rock try to throw an imaginary punch because they have to be on radio. They throw an imaginary punch over to Bobby, and I would be the one, performing all of the fight, and like an ashtray would fall, and it would be a break, like a glass, like a break box that I would use to break things, and all of that was happening in real time. That was a blast, and watching them watch me was like the most exciting thing, because they literally would be on mic and then they would just turn and watch me perform, and it was like this kind of give and take. That was really cool. And then my recent one, like I just worked with Miss Phylicia Rashad on Blues for an Alabama Sky, and I mean she's the queen. Like, you just being in the room with her, you realize why she is where she is. She has such gifts to offer, such gifts to give. And you realize that just being in a room with her and watching her direct, watching her talk about the craft and the experience that she's had for how many decades that she's been doing this. And you learn so much because you realize her passion for what she's doing. She still is mystified why she's still doing it all these years. She still has that conversation. And that's a gift, to realize that even at the height, that never goes away, that just makes it almost like, again, a sense of ease, knowing that we're all going to experience this. And it doesn't matter if you're at the beginning of your craft or at the height of your craft, but there's gifts that we have to offer and to give. And to watch her is just, it's so much joy, because she really loves the process. She really loves working with actors, and she loves music. I'll sit there and go, Phylicia, do you want to hear some of the stuff I'm thinking of, like, for the scene? And then all of a sudden we'll stop listening to music that's for the play, and I'll just put on some Luther Vandross or some James Ingram, and we'll just sing, because we also want to have fun. We want to have a great time. And really, we forget, because we're so like, again, our work is so much about like getting to the finish line. Sometimes we just need a little artist break, and go, okay, it's time to put on some Luther Vandross. Let's all sing and relax. And that was really cool, to just be in a room and just see that special craft, that process that she has lived her whole life around. And for her to still be shocked when someone says, I want you to direct this play. She still gets like, me? You want me to do that? Like, what a joy, what a cool perspective to see that. So
That's
that
awesome.
that was the most recent one. And now I get to work on a brand new, well, not a brand new, we're revisiting a show that Lily Tomlin did about 20, 30 years ago, called Search for Signs of the Intelligent Life in the Universe. And Cecily Strong from SNL is playing that character. And we've been working together remotely, because she's in New York. But you see the joy there too, to be able to take a story, and she's playing like, I think, 9 different characters. And you see the passion that she has to like go in and out of these different characters. And it's exciting. It just never goes away. It's just someone else carrying the torch and the baton, and watching them run with it and go, oh my God, like, I want to go. Where do we go? So I love it. I love the work I do. And I'm so excited at a chance to tell another story.
Yeah. Jeff, this has been an amazing conversation. I definitely will probably invite you to come back in the future at some point in time. I mean, I feel honored to know you, and I feel grateful to be reconnected with you again after all of these years. And I love that you're doing what you love, and that, that you're in the creative space that you're in. I think it's amazing, and it's
Thank you, Melissa.
inspiring.
Thank you. That's really nice to say. And I'm so glad to be able to have this forum to be able to talk about this kind of work, what we do. I think that's fantastic. So, and we're going to be talking a lot more offline too, which I'm excited about. So, but thank you for this adventure.
Awesome. So is there anything that you want to shout out in terms of website, social media? How can people stay connected with you if you want them to be connected with you?
Well, I think just to see this play that's coming up at the Mark Taper Forum, I believe I want to say we open on the 28th of September. It's at the Mark Taper Forum. Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. It's unlike anything I've ever done, but yet it's used all the skills that I've been working towards this moment in time. It's combining Foley, it's combining sound design, it's combining how I think as an actor emotionally. The show is a one-woman show with no costume changes. There's no props on stage. So anything she does, if she's like, for instance, making a martini, then she's holding an imaginary thing, a shaker, pouring it, stirring whatever glass. If she's putting makeup on, it's all imaginary. So all of the sound is coming from the sound department. Whoa. And there's like 500 sound cues, which I'm like blown away. Like it's literally like she takes a cup, puts it down on the table, makes a sound. If she throws it and it breaks, that's all coming from me. It's just exciting. Like what an adventure. So I can't wait for people to go on this adventure with me. And that's on September 28th, Mark Taper Forum. And I think it runs for a month, but that's the thing that's on my sort of radar right now that I'm hugely excited about.
Okay. So you guys go to the website for the Mark Taper Theater, Los Angeles, and it'll have all the information for this show. And we all need to go. I need to look on there to see when I can go. Very exciting.
You can get some. I might have some tickets under your name.
Oh, hey, y'all heard it. I got witnesses. Whoever's listening, woo woo, they might have some tickets for me. I love it.
It's gonna be fun, Melissa. I'm so glad. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna get ready to wrap up. But thank you again, Jeff. You guys have been listening to For the Artists, a podcast brought to you by Creative and Projects. I've been your host, Melissa Sharee, with the one and only Jeff Gardner. So until next week, y'all already know what I'm going to tell you to do, and that is to keep creating from the inside out. Peace.
Thanks, Melissa.